Hey everybody, welcome back to another edition of Rapid Recap from us here at Inside Nebraska. He is senior recruiting analyst and just all-around great guy, Greg Smith. And I'm Zack Carpenter.
My titles are getting bigger as we go along.
I think I'm just going to switch it for every time we do one of these breakdowns. Just switch it up, try to catch you off your feet.
Okay.
So Greg, the only question I have after today's press conference, you feeling like a lion today? You've been running around like a lion today?
I woke up with a lion mentality.
Yeah, that's good.
I feel like Coach E.J. Barthel would be very happy with my lion mentality.
That's how you attack today's coverage, too. It's how you attack the recruiting beats, how you attack recruiting blitz with our digital content extraordinaire, Jansen Coburn.
That's right.
So I love to hear that.
Good.
And E.J. Barthel, like you said, would love to hear that because that was one of the emphasis, the main focal points of his time with the media today when he spoke was harping on the fact that he wants his running backs to run with a lion mentality, and then dropped a couple other mantras in there. One of note was we train with our eyes, like running with our eyes, and that's how he wants the running back room to carry themselves like a lion. That's how he wants them to run, is to have that vision and see the open hole and attack it.
Yeah, and Gabe Irvin mentioned that, and it's funny because you were over there with Coach Barthel. I was over with Gabe Irvin at the same time, and I didn't know that EJ had said that about being the lion mindset.
CJ Cavazos, come on in. Yeah, we're not live, but we're recording. Come on in for a guest appearance.
No guest appearances. Good seeing y'all. Go Big Red.
CJ, who's the next commit? Who's the next commit? All right.
And then it was funny because you were over there with Coach E.J. Barthel at the same time. I was over with running back Gabe Irvin, and Gabe mentioned about that lion mentality, and I didn't know where that came from because he just kind of mentioned it, and I hadn't heard that before. It turns out it was from his coach, which means once again that we've heard another one of those mantras talked about, this time in real time from a coach, and then have a player actually repeat it back to us in the media as well. I think that's one of the really interesting, like you can't really measure what that means, kind of storylines of the team. But these guys that come up and talk to us at the podium, the players, sound exactly like their position coaches, and I think that that's a really good thing.
Yeah, there was 2-3 weeks ago in one of my mailbags at InsideNebraska.com, subscriber had asked, what do you think would be the number one storyline at fall camp? And there are a few of them, whether it's the defensive line needing to gain experience, offensive line figuring that out, Jeff Sims obviously, but number one for me was what you were going to hear, what I predicted you would hear, which is what we have heard, is that alignment, that same messaging from the top down, from Rule trickling down all the way to throughout the roster and the assistant coaches, and that's another example.
And in real time, that just caught really caught my attention. Then we were like, wait a second, he said that? Oh, he said that too, right at the same time. It was just funny.
And it's the same thing at Big Ten Media Days when Rule talked about we want to earn that respect back. We want to be a team that's feared again, but first we have to put respect back on Nebraska's name, and then you heard that from different players throughout, and then you've heard that today and a couple times throughout the week at the press conferences. But one other thing from Barthel was it was nice to hear that one of the focal points was the strategy, the teaching of having the running backs just hit the hole and take that 4-yard gain, take that 5-yard gain, that not a sexy run, not every, I think his exact quote was, not every run has to be a home run. Right. That's what we're emphasizing. And he wasn't talking about anyone specifically, that's just sort of a whole position room overview, but I know Anthony Grant last year, he hit those home runs early the first few games, and he was breaking off those long runs, juking, and he fell in love with it a little bit, and now it sounds like we're going to be seeing them sort of just take what's there, take a single instead of trying to leg it into a triple or an inside the park.
But you know what that actually, we talk about alignment and how these things fit together. You know what that makes me think of right away? Matt Rule talking about wanting to get 75 rushing yards in the fourth quarter, right? Something that's going to continue to come up. It came up again with Gabe Irvin again today, and he really liked that idea, obviously, as a running back. But also it means that everything's kind of in a line. That's how you train that way, right? You wake up to be a lion. You say take those 3-4 yard gains, and then by the time you get to the fourth quarter, you've worn the defense down and you can get that 75 75 yards rushing. Like, it all makes sense together, which is really refreshing to hear these guys talk about, and again, to hear it kind of echoed throughout the whole organization right now.
Yeah, and then we heard from Barthel and Gabe Irvin, heard from another running back, Ramir Johnson, who you hear the phrase, and I think I've written it, sort of change of pace back, but he's a little more than that.
Yeah.
I try to emphasize that whenever I use that phrase, change of pace back or home run hitter, because he is those things, but he talked about the fact that he's added a little more muscle to his frame. He said about 5 pounds, so nothing like drastic, but can still make an impact. And because he talked about, I run through the tackles. Like, he's known for displaying some toughness over the years, and not just being a perimeter guy. And he's another guy who could be a benefactor from that mentality. In Barthel's room and Marcus Satterfield's offense, Husker offense coordinator, who we also heard from today, he spoke for a little over 10 minutes. I don't know the exact time. I was over with Barthel, and you were over with Satterfield a little bit.
And Satterfield kept it pretty general. Like, it was, kind of in the same way that Tony White, the defensive coordinator, did the last time we spoke to these guys about, we're just trying to get everybody up to speed, get everyone on the same page, make sure that, they know kind of the operation at this point. He was very reluctant to kind of single anyone out in particular. But he talked a lot about the offense being multiple, which is why, Ramir Johnson was a perfect segue into talking about him because he's going to be a guy that's used in a lot of different ways. But, Satterfield talked about kind of, what kind of weapon Janarin Bonner, because he was asked specifically about Bonner, can be kind of at the fullback. And he said, well, the thing about our positionless offense, and then he kind of go into that. He said, I know everybody kind of just laughed when we heard that beginning of, when we first got here, but that's actually how we want to play, where, he could line up at fullback, he can line up at halfback, he can line up at wide receiver, a true tight end. It just gives us a lot more kind of variety to the offense. And I think that is a theme kind of along with what Tony White also said about throwing a lot at guys, right? And seeing what they can handle, what they retain and can take in, and then pairing it back as you get closer to Minnesota.
Yeah, it's interesting, the positionless offense you hear about in basketball now over the last several years. It's revolutionized. It's evolved to be a positionless game, essentially. Yeah,
okay.
The Fly's attacking both of us right now. Yeah. Fly, we still got a couple points to get to, so it's chill, Breaking Bad Fly. But the positionless offense, I mean, you hear the positionless in basketball and even on defense where they talk about that. You don't hear it as often with the offense, but it sounds like that's a goal, a philosophy they have. And Ramir is a good case of that because he's being used as a running back. He's working a little bit in the wide receivers room, but everybody calm down. It's not a wide back. We're not going to be bringing back that term anytime soon, but he can be used in the pass catching game, or the pass game, and in the run game. And he actually, I asked him if Satterfield had shown him film from his time at South Carolina to sort of showcase how we can utilize him in this offense, because if you look through the history of Satterfield at Temple and South Carolina, he uses the running backs in the passing game a lot. He said, yeah, he was showing me some film from last year, and then Ramir actually asked Coach Satterfield to install a specific play where he was used as a running back, and he's like, and he did. He installed that play, so it's like, all right, so they're getting input too.
Yeah, which is a great thing to hear. Yeah, whenever, and it really is good for both sides, right? Like you, as a player, he had kind of the confidence to go to his coach with that, but then also to then be reinforced and have your coach actually take that. Not every coach would have taken that. Right. Some coaches would have been like, oh yeah, sure, man, go ahead and get out of the office. I'll see you later. But he actually did, and that's actually really neat. Whether or not we see it, hopefully we do. Hopefully that play gets him something on the field, and then we're able to. He's talking about it in a post-game press conference sometime in the fall.
Yeah, that's actually something I had been reviewing yesterday, the press conference videos from Tuesday, and that's something Tony White talked about. Is sort of in the same realm. He was talking about Tommy Hill and how Tommy Hill has shown that effort and done the things on and off the field that the coaches asked of him, and he said that's what you're supposed to reward, right? Is guys who, when you teach them and they tell them the things they need to improve, when they do that, you have to you're supposed to reward them. And I think that's sort of a staff-wide philosophy that they've shown. And last point, speaking of Tony White in the defense, Ben Scott and Nate Borkacher were the other two players to meet with the media today. And Ben Scott, I asked him sort of about adjustment to the Satterfield offense because it's known as complex, and his role as on the line of calling the protections, sliding protections, and then he talked about how the 3-3-5 defense is flying around, so it makes it even tougher to do that, but it's a good type of tough. It's a good challenge. And then I asked him if how playing that 3-3 against that defense in practice is going to help them in the Big Ten slate, and he said it's going to be the best defense we face all year in terms of complexity.
Right.
So that way they go up to Minnesota and they face that 4-2, it's going to be like, okay, we're used to practicing against more complex, like more aggressive defense.
Right.
I guess.
Yeah, and that's a good point. This is something now they'll still, have scout team and kind of go through that to replicate Minnesota. But I do think that that's something worth putting a pin in because that's right. They should never be more confused than they are at this point right now by what a defense is doing. So that'll definitely be something to revisit in the fall.
Yeah, it reminds me of back in the 90s and back when this program was a perennially winning program. They would talk about how the practices were way more brutal than the games, and the games were more of a they had never used the word cakewalk, but it was like the games are something you look forward to. It was a lot easier than practice. And it sounds like that's another thing that's being implemented and installed here in this program. But Greg, unless you have anything else, any last points you want to make?
No, that should be it.
Yeah, I think we ran a little long than we normally do, but there's a lot to digest from the day. There's been a lot to digest from the Huskers all week as their fall camp first week is well underway, grinding through camp, and you can check out all of our coverage at InsideNebraska.com. Like and subscribe to this video for all of our YouTube videos and have them drop directly into your feed. They're already dropped directly in our feed. Yeah. And then also on our podcast, Apple Podcasts and Spotify, you can subscribe to those as well. So for Greg Smith, I'm Zack Carpenter. We're going to sign off as the noise gets louder and louder around here. So we'll catch you guys again next time.